My name is Cordelia Winchester, and if you had asked me just a year ago, I would have laughed at the idea of life after death. As a trauma nurse in Seattle, I had spent countless hours surrounded by the fragility of human life. I'd seen death in all its forms: violent, peaceful, sudden, slow. To me, it was a clinical reality, something I could understand through the lens of science and medicine. I believed that death was final, a cessation of brain activity, the end. Anything beyond that? Hallucinations, chemical reactions of a dying brain. That's what I would have said, what I did say, to anyone who brought up the topic. But all of that changed on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was midway through a shift at Harborview Medical Center, one of those rare mornings where the emergency department felt unusually calm. I had been on my feet since 6 a.m., going through the usual routine of rounds, assessments, and charting. Around 10:30, I was in room 14 with a teenage boy who had come in with a broken arm from a skateboarding accident. He was brave for his age, trying to hide his pain, but his nervous glances at the floor told me he was more scared than he let on. That's when it hit me. It was as though an invisible hand had reached inside my chest and squeezed with merciless force. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, sharp and all-consuming. I stumbled, clutching at my chest as my knees buckled beneath me. I reached out instinctively for the wall, the four-pole, anything to keep me upright, but my hand never made it. My vision blurred, my legs gave out, and the last thing I heard was the panicked voice of my patient, screaming, "Nurse! Somebody help!" Then, everything went black. When I woke up, they told me I had suffered a massive pulmonary embolism. A blood clot had traveled to my lungs and cut off the blood supply. The doctors said I was clinically dead for nearly 5 minutes. 5 minutes. It took for my entire understanding of life, death, and reality to be turned inside out. What happened in those 5 minutes wasn't a hallucination, wasn't a dream. It was more vivid, more real, than anything I had ever experienced in my life. And it left me with a truth I couldn't unsee. It was as though someone had flipped a switch. The pain was gone. The noise of the monitors, the frantic shouting, it all faded into an all-encompassing stillness. I thought for a brief, disoriented moment that I must have passed out. But then I realized I was still aware. I opened my eyes, or at least it felt like I did, and found myself floating. The first thing I saw was the room below me. My body lay crumpled on the floor, surrounded by chaos. Dr. Martinez was there, kneeling over me, his hands pumping rhythmically on my chest. His usually calm, commanding face was etched with a tension I had never seen before. Sarah, my best friend and fellow nurse, was by the crash cart, fumbling with the defibrillator paddles, her cheeks streaked with tears. "Clear," she shouted, her voice cracking. I wanted to reach out to them, to tell them I was okay, that I didn't feel pain anymore, that I felt peaceful. But I couldn't. I had no voice, no hands, no body. It was strange and unsettling, yet at the same time, it felt natural, like slipping into a warm bath. From above, I watched them work frantically, calling out medical commands I had said myself countless times before. "AP's in. Starting compressions again." It was surreal watching my own resuscitation unfold. And then it hit me, I wasn't breathing. My body wasn't me. I was something else now, untethered, weightless, floating above it all. One moment I was watching the scene in the hospital, my colleagues fighting to save me, and the next, I was moving. It felt like being drawn upward, though direction didn't quite matter in this place. The sensation was swift yet gentle, like being carried by a current that understood exactly where it was going. As I moved, the world around me shifted. The sterile hospital floor, the bright overhead lights, the rhythmic beeping of machines, they faded into nothingness. What replaced them was a darkness that wasn't frightening or empty. It was warm and enveloping, like a soft blanket on a cold night. Then came the light. It started as a faint glow far ahead, but it grew brighter and brighter with every passing moment. It wasn't like any light I'd ever seen, nothing harsh or blinding. It was welcoming, alive, and warm. It called to me not with sound, but with a feeling so deep and primal it was impossible to resist. I realized I was moving faster, gliding through what I can only describe as a tunnel of light. The speed was incredible, far beyond anything I could have imagined, but it didn't feel disorienting. Instead, it was natural, as though I'd always known how to move this way. As I traveled, something extraordinary began to happen. My thoughts expanded, unfurling like a flower in the sun. It was as though I'd been living in a tiny, cramped room my whole life, and now every wall, every barrier, was falling away. I understood things I'd never understood before about life, about myself, about existence itself. Questions that had once haunted me were suddenly answered, not in words, but in a knowing that was deeper than language. And then I emerged into a space that defied earthly comprehension. Colors I couldn't name swirled and danced in the air, shimmering with a vibrancy I'd never seen. The air itself felt alive, humming with a music that wasn't sound but sensation, a harmony that resonated through every part of me. I no longer felt like a body or even a person. I was simply awareness, a presence floating in a realm so beautiful it brought a sense of awe I hadn't known I was capable of feeling. The light around me grew brighter, almost unbearably so, yet it didn't sting or overwhelm. Instead, it filled me with a peace so profound it was as though every wound, every fear, every piece of brokenness I'd ever carried simply melted away. I felt whole in a way I never knew was possible, as if I were finally truly myself. And then I saw Jesus. He stood before me, radiant and magnificent, yet utterly familiar, like someone I had always known but somehow forgotten. It wasn't the Jesus I'd seen in paintings or stained glass windows. There were no flowing robes, no haloed crown. His presence was simpler yet infinitely more profound. Light radiated from him, brighter than the tunnel I had traveled through, but it was a light that carried love, not heat or weight. I couldn't look away. His eyes, if they could even be called eyes, held everything, the wisdom of countless ages and the compassion of a love so deep and pure it could fill the universe. I didn't kneel because I didn't have a body, yet I felt as though my very soul bowed before him in reverence and gratitude. Cordelia, he said, and the sound wasn't a sound at all. It was thought, pure and clear, flowing directly into the essence of who I was. There's something you need to see. Before I could even think to respond, he reached out, not physically, but with a gesture of his presence, and the space around us transformed. The colors and music of the realm shifted, giving way to something new. We stood or floated or existed in a place that defied the rules of time and space. It was vast, immeasurable, and layered in ways I couldn't comprehend. Dimensions folded into one another, and yet it felt cohesive, perfectly ordered. It was alive, pulsating with energy, every corner brimming with purpose. This, Jesus said, is the third heaven. It's not the final heaven, but a place of transition, a way station for souls. His words carried more than meaning. They carried understanding, as though they unlocked parts of my mind I hadn't known existed. I felt the truth of what he said, not just in thought but in the very fabric of my being. I looked around, taking in the intricacies of this realm. It was beautiful beyond description, but it wasn't just beauty for its own sake. There was an intentionality to it, a design that spoke of purpose and love. It wasn't bound by the laws of earthly physics, things shifted and flowed in ways I couldn't explain, yet it all felt perfectly natural. This is where souls come to heal, to learn, and to prepare for what comes next, Jesus explained. His voice, or the thought of his voice, carried no judgment, only love. It's a place of immense grace, Cordelia. And I brought you here so you could understand. The golden fields and shimmering trees dissolved into a vast space unlike anything I had ever encountered. It was expansive and luminous, with structures of light rising in the distance, forming what looked like amphitheaters woven from pure energy. This is the halls of learning, Jesus said, his voice carrying a calm authority that immediately put me at ease. Here, souls actively engage in divine learning. The air here felt alive, buzzing with a sense of purpose and discovery. I could see souls gathered in the amphitheaters, their forms glowing softly as they interacted with beings who radiated wisdom and compassion. These luminous guides emanated a presence so profound, I instinctively understood them to be teachers, masters of truth and love. I was drawn toward one amphitheater, where a group of souls was engaged in what Jesus called a life review. It wasn't like watching a movie, it was as if the moments of their lives were being recreated in vivid, multidimensional detail. But the most remarkable part was that the souls didn't just see their actions, they experienced them from every perspective involved. I watched as one soul relived a moment of kindness, giving food to a stranger in need. They felt their own emotions of compassion and love, but also experienced the gratitude and relief of the person they had helped. It didn't stop there. I saw the ripple effects of that single act, the stranger's renewed faith in humanity, their decision to help others in turn, and the chain reaction of positivity that followed. This is how divine love works, Jesus explained, standing beside me. Every act of love and kindness sends ripples of light through creation, touching countless lives. The halls of learning are a place of profound opportunity, Jesus said. Here, souls not only review their lives but also prepare for their next steps, learning the truths they need to grow closer to divine love. I stood in awe, watching as the souls in this realm engaged fully in their process of understanding, healing, and growth. From the healing chambers, I found myself surrounded by a new, radiant energy. It felt familiar, like walking into the embrace of an old friend. Around me, I saw countless souls, each glowing with a unique light, working with purpose and devotion. Jesus turned to me, his expression full of quiet joy. These are what you might call guardian angels, he said. Souls who have chosen to help guide and protect those still on earth. My attention was drawn to one soul in particular, a presence that filled me with warmth and recognition. It was my grandmother, vibrant and full of life, looking just as she had in her prime. Her light was bright and steady, and when she smiled, a flood of memories and understanding washed over me. I saw her standing beside my mother during her battle with cancer, offering strength when the nights felt endless. I saw her guiding my brother on his wedding day, her joy mingling with his as he spoke his vows. And I saw her with me in the emergency room, her unseen hand steadying mine during moments when I doubted my ability to save a life. "You've been with us all this time," I whispered, my thoughts flowing directly to her. "Every moment," she replied, her voice like a melody in my mind. "Every prayer, every need is heard. We cannot always change the path you must walk, but we send love, strength, and guidance whenever we can. Prayers are never in vain," Jesus said gently. "They create ripples of light that reach the unseen realms. Sometimes the answers are not what you expect, but they are always heard and responded to." I saw how prayers became threads of light connecting the living to the souls who watched over them. These threads pulsed with love and intention, carrying comfort, clarity, or quiet strength to those who needed it most. The transition back to the physical world was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't abrupt, but rather gradual, a gentle pulling, as though I were being drawn from the vast, boundless expanse of the heavens back into the familiar constraints of the human body. The peace, the warmth, the clarity of the realm I had been in started to fade, and the heaviness of the physical world began to settle in around me once more. My eyes fluttered open, and the first thing I saw was the fluorescent lighting overhead. My chest was tight, and I struggled to breathe, but the sensation was different. Somehow, I felt like I had just returned from a faraway place, and the realization hit me like a wave. I had been dead, and now, I was alive again. I tried to move, but my limbs felt like lead, sluggish and uncooperative. I saw the faces of my colleagues, nurses and doctors, around me, their expressions a mix of concern and urgency. They were trying to bring me back, to revive me, and they had succeeded. But I wasn't sure if I had truly returned. Was I still the same person who had collapsed just moments ago? Or had something inside me changed forever? The lessons I learned from the afterlife continue to resonate within me every day, shaping how I navigate the world, how I interact with others, and how I view my own place in the grand tapestry of existence. Above all, what became abundantly clear is that love is not just an emotion, it is the very essence of everything. Love is the force that binds us all together across time, across dimensions, and even beyond death. It's not something that fades or disappears, it's eternal. Every act of kindness, every moment of understanding, no matter how small, ripples out into the universe, creating waves that touch countless lives, often in ways we can never fully comprehend.